Committee's celebration of National Coming Out Day. We want to first acknowledge and thank our sponsors of today's event, the MHA in Chautauqua County, the Fenton History Center, the Robert H. Jackson Center, which is so graciously hosting us here today, and Prevention Works Hope Chautauqua. Without these sponsors, none of this would have been possible. Today's been a very exciting day here in Jamestown, and it's a great honor to represent the Pride Committee here today. But before I go any further, I just want to give a special acknowledgement and thanks to somebody who's missing here today, and that's Sheridan Smith. He is the chair of the Jamestown Pride Committee, and because of an emergency, he could not be with us today. But we all know that we would not be here in this place without Sheridan's dedicated and tireless leadership to making this happen. So to Sheridan, we say thank you and know that you're here in all of our hearts. Earlier today, we had a historic event happen in downtown Jamestown. For the first time in history, the pride flag was raised at City Hall at Jamestown. And it was truly a very exciting event. I encourage all of you, after we finish here this afternoon, if you have the opportunity, please, after dark, drive down to City Hall in Jamestown and notice the pride flag flying, but also notice that City Hall is lit up in the colors of the pride flag. So I want to welcome everyone if I haven't done that already. And I also want to make note about a couple things about telling stories. We are certainly not the first group of people to realize the power of the spoken historical word. From the earliest humans huddling in caves around the warmth of fires to keep them warm, stories were exchanged. And we all know, or many of us know, that many of our spiritual texts that we turn to for inspiration today are really just books of stories. Today in our modern pop culture, the queer community's coming out stories have become the stories of blockbuster films, from Paris is Burning and Boys Don't Cry to My Beautiful Laundrette and Brokeback Mountain. But the queer community's stories are much more than source material for just another hit movie. In fact, the blogger Molly Ho argues that there are 6 reasons why we need to tell our stories. And the first reason is for connection. When we tell our stories, we start to find our people, and we allow them to see the parts of us that were once too hard for us to share. The second thing she points out is that we find depth. For when we question and tell our own stories, we get to explore ourselves and really know ourselves better. That process helps us to, in turn, love ourselves. The third thing that she argues happens when we tell stories is that we give permission. And permission allows others to be safe in the space that we create, either now at this very moment or in the future. For somebody who's listening to our stories today, the safety that they find today might be what they call on 2 or 3 years from now, when their coming out story actually takes place. And the fourth reason is for authenticity. For the power of being authentic builds within us courage and trust and safety. Fifth is awareness. When we educate others as to who we really are, stigma and stereotype melt away. Hate and discrimination-based stigma can melt into the light of awareness. Things can change by our very example of sharing our story. And the sixth reason why she argues we should tell stories, and maybe the most important, is that it builds community. The power of many people coming together for a common good. We get filled with the amazing power of knowing we belong somewhere and that we can be safe. Now, as we move forward with the stories that we're going to share here today, there are a few more words that I want to say. Some of our stories are filled with joy and love and community and happy endings. But often our stories of coming out sometimes travel a different path. They travel the path of hate and hurt and abuse and for some of us even physical violence. Some of our stories are sweet, and some that you hear today could be graphic and they could be intense. So please, if at any point during our gathering today you need to take care of yourself, please take care of yourself. But know that our stories today will all be truthful, and we hope that they will lead to connection to other individuals, to depth, to permission to be who we are, for authenticity and awareness of who we really are, and of course, community. A vibrant and safe and bright queer community that deepens the richness of our great Jamestown and Chautauqua community. And now I'd like to introduce Noah Gooding from the Fenton History Center, who's going to talk a bit about the event and the project that's going on at the Fenton. Nora?
Great. Well, thank you, Stephen, for that excellent introduction. And thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak today before we kick off this great event. I want to start out my comments in a similar vein as Stephen did by acknowledging the community partnerships that have made this project not only possible, but successful. As a representative of the Fenton, I began our part in this project with just an idea of what I'd like to think was possible in our community. Jamestown Pride and the Mental Health Association immediately threw their support behind the idea and agreed to formalize a working relationship with us after the New York State Council on the Arts and the Greater Hudson Heritage Network generously gave us a grant to get our work moving. As our project has progressed, I have been gratified to see other community individuals and organizations get excited about and join in on our support and support our work. I want to specifically mention and thank the Jamestown Public Market, WJTN and Media One, WRFA, Prevention Works, Hope Chautauqua, the Robert H. Jackson Center, and most recently the National Comedy Center for helping to support and uplift the work that we're doing. With those thank yous out of the way, let me take a step back and talk more about our work, our project, and why it's important to be doing it now. Just about a year ago, the Fenton History Center was approached by Jamestown Pride with a simple request. Their organization wanted to know more about the history of the local LGBTQ+ movement in Jamestown in order to help with their celebration for their Pride planning. History is what our organization does. It's literally in the name of our organization. So this should have been a simple request, but it wasn't. After an exhaustive search of our archives, we turned up 2 items. Both of them were promotional buttons. One of them just had a rainbow on it, while the other one was more directly in support of the local LGBTQ+ community. Those buttons were the sum total of what we had to offer regarding LGBTQ+ history in Jamestown. Jamestown Pride took this disappointing result with surprising equanimity, but I was embarrassed for my organization and disappointed that we had failed in our mission to serve everyone in our community. I resolved to at least try to do better. It was out of this initially negative experience that so much positivity has come forth in the past year. To rectify the missing history within our archive, we at the Fenton are working closely with leaders and community members within the local LGBTQ+ community with the intention of establishing a specific historic record at the Fenton that will endure and be added onto as we move forward. The next time someone asks us about the LGBTQ+ history of Jamestown, we want to have an answer. And we want that answer to come from the real voices of our community. To help promote this effort and to show that we are committed to letting the voices of our community speak at the Fenton, we are also planning an exhibit scheduled to open in early 2021 that will be created out of what we can collect from LGBTQ plus voices in 2020. This celebration today is part of our efforts, as the videos that are recorded here will be directly added to the growing LGBTQ plus archive at the Fenton. And these local voices will have their stories recorded in perpetuity as part of the historical record of our town and our community. I hope that as word spreads about our efforts, that more of our local LGBTQ plus community will want to add their stories and their experiences to our archive. The history of any community is just a collection of the voices that were saved. So I hope that you will work with me to make sure that your voice is saved and retained in our historical record. At this early stage in our collection, anything that represents the LGBTQ plus experience has meaning within our archive. So we are encouraging participants to express their donations in whatever form feels correct to them. That could be a story, a photo, an artistic piece, a protest sign, or whatever else that speaks clearly of their local experience within our community. This project has not come without controversy. I've encountered divisiveness and vitriol related to this archive and this exhibit that have not emerged during any other project I've worked on in Jamestown. For me, seeing this reaction provides one answer to the second question I asked at the beginning of this speech. Why is this work important now? There are many answers to this question that have nothing to do with hate or ignorance. This project serves our mission at the Fenton. It provides nuance to the history that we collect and that we are passing on to future researchers. It broadens the appeal of the Fenton to a wider base in our community. But the negative comments that have been made to me are ones based on a lack of information of the diversity in our community. As an educational organization, it is incumbent on us at the Fenton to accept our responsibility and our failing when members of the community speak ignorantly. By allowing the LGBTQ plus community to remain underrepresented in our historical record, through our failure to engage previously, we have become complicit in the pervasiveness of ignorance within our community. Though I don't think this exhibit or this archive will eliminate prejudice, it is my intention that the Fenton will continue its role as a trusted resource, a place that can foster productive dialogue by presenting a full picture of our community, not one that is predicated on comfort levels, but one that is based in reality. I'm encouraged by the progress that has been made this year. I'm honored that representatives of the LGBTQ plus community have been willing to trust me to help with this work. I'm proud to see community celebrations like this one and the flag raising earlier today at City Hall happening and being supported. I'm hopeful that this project and others like it that promote diversity within our city will continue to spread so that we can all learn a little bit more about our fellow citizens. I had the honor of talking with Tim Maines recently, the first openly gay elected individual in New York State, and I asked him what he thought about ignorance. He said, the issue was that people were hidden, and if people weren't hidden, that people wouldn't have some of those weird ideas. I decided I would be in my own realm and in my own way a piece of reality, that I would remind people that by my being there, that this incidental in our common humanity is just that. He and I believe in the power of education to bring new perspectives and new insight. I encourage all who watch this to join our effort at the Fenton and become, in Tim's words, a piece of reality, one of many that will help us to educate and improve our community. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Noah, so much for highlighting the big role that the Fenton is playing in our society, in our community, for the queer community. So I'd like to introduce our first person who we're going to be speaking with today, and this is Haley Arson, who is a friend of mine and a friend of, obviously, a member of the community. It's great to have you here, Haley.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really glad to be here.
Great. So would you mind sharing with us what you do for the community here in Chautauqua County?
Of course, of course. I work on behalf of the Jamestown Transgender Support Group here in town. We provide help for people who are looking for medical assistance, people who are needing help with finding doctors, finding medications, finding the things that they need. But we also provide a community for trans people, non-binary people, and people who don't feel like they fit into the box of cis. And over the past 2.5 years that we've been working, we've kind of developed this wonderful family that has really changed the way I've seen Jamestown.
Oh, that's wonderful. One of the terms, Haley, that I heard you say was cis. And for some people in our community and some people who might be watching, I think sometimes we're afraid we get caught up on the terms and that we're going to offend somebody if we ask them, what does that term mean? Or can you explain that to me? Would you be willing to just talk about some of the terms that we hear as they relate to the queer or trans community?
I'd be glad to. And of course, I'm going to preface this with the words and terms that I use are what I use to help describe myself, my people in the community. And I may not have the same words and meanings that other people in the community use themselves. So this is for me, and I guess the best thing to do for definitions when you don't understand something is ask. I'd hope that most of this comes from a place of comfort and joy, and there should be no real issue in going, could you please explain cis to me? Would you like me to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Explain cis to us.
Well, cis is a term that we've used in the community to describe people who feel comfortable in the assigned gender that they had when they were born. Cis is an antonym to being trans. It is the word that people who are not trans would use to describe themselves.
Great, thank you.
The reason why we use it is because if somebody doesn't know the word, they may say something like normal. And that can be kind of a downer. It's not that it's abnormal or normal, but it's a way to describe a situation in which everybody gets to have a word to describe themselves to feel included.
So, Haley, you and I had an opportunity to talk before we actually started today, and you told me about being in a relationship for 18 years, I
Yes.
believe. And can you talk to us a little bit about your story of transitioning with the support of somebody in a relationship that you were able to maintain and grow during your process of transitioning?
Of course, of course. I grew up in Kyneton, and I went to Frewsburg, and when you're part of the queer community, the LGBTQ plus community, you don't come out once a year. You don't come out once. You do it all day, every day. You come out to your parents, you come out to your friends, you come out to your schoolmates, your teachers, you come out in college, you come out to your job, you come out to your coworkers, and you do it every day you go to the supermarket. And having support has really made me feel fortunate. I am where I am because of the support. I met my husband in high school. We've been together for 18 years. Through our journeys of self-exploration, we had support to always know that no matter what was going on, we knew that we had something. My husband, Sonny, is also trans, and when people ask, where do you fall in the queer community, I would say that I'm happily trans. I love it. It gives me a unique perspective on things that people who maybe don't understand or haven't listened yet don't get to hear that often, and that's kind of why I wanted to be here and share this. I was also in the this year's Vagina Monologues, where I met 22 wonderful women, and part of coming out was the fear of, will I be hated? Will I be pushed away? Will I not be allowed to be who I am? In going there, I found acceptance. I found a place for myself, and I have multiple new friends, and being comfortable enough to get to that point was only through the support of my husband, my husband's family, and most importantly, my father.
I so appreciate you sharing that story and that bit of your story where you talked about how coming out is not something that you just do once. It's something that you do many times throughout your life. And I think those of us who have a coming out story can relate to that. And sometimes it goes good and sometimes it doesn't go good, right?
Yeah. Coming out to my mother when I was in college did not go out over so well. And that was coming out as either gay or bisexual, or I don't even remember, but it was not the best experience. But later coming out to my father as trans, as I figured out why I was hurting so bad, that I'm actually a woman. My father said, I don't know what that means. I can't relate. I don't have an answer for you. And in me exploring what that meant as a trans person, he explored what that meant as a parent. And he bought books, he went to seminars, YouTube videos, TED Talks, all that stuff. And I was amazed at how much he wanted to still be a part of my life and understand and support me. And when he realized that there was no transgender support group here in Jamestown anymore, he made one. He made one for me and everybody else in the community who needed that. And with him and his girlfriend, and we were the first 3 people in the group. Our first meeting had 3 people. The next 6 months, we had 12. We're up to over 20 at this point. And having his support, we did Thanksgiving dinners as a family. We did Christmas. We did a white elephant gift exchange. I was so exhausted doing the act of being part of the trans community and being part of the support group that he took all of this pressure off of me and made a place for me to meet my family. And
the part of that really strikes me is that transition from being at a point where your father said to you, I don't know anything about this and I don't know how to support you, to the point where your father is actually helping you create a group where you can get support, but also help others in our community. And it's so important to remember that these coming out stories so often do lead us to happy places, to good places, to places where we feel connected in our community.
We were so excited for this year. 2020 was going to be an amazing year for our group. We were excited for the Jamestown Pride. And things didn't go as planned. I actually lost my father this spring due to a stroke, and I miss him greatly. Whenever you ever lose a loved one, you don't know what your life's going to be like after that, especially with somebody so supportive. I have an amazing support group because of my husband, because of my husband's family. But who are you after your most supportive family member dies? What I didn't realize immediately is that he had been unconsciously fostering this idea that our group was not us coming together as trans individuals we came together as family. I have family of people who they understand what it is to be where I am. And I have such a large supportive family, even after losing my father.
It's amazing how after we come out, and this has been my experience too, that we have an opportunity to connect with who is our chosen family. And then hopefully we have an opportunity to also connect maybe with our biological families, maybe not for some of us, but how the resiliency of our community is able to create that family to support each and every one of us.
Well, I mean, in the process of coming out, I did come out to my biological family, but it didn't go so well. It's their loss.
Yeah.
It really is. I was never going to forego my identity to appease their vision of what family needed to be. And not everybody can make that choice right away. It's difficult. Please,
Right.
take care of yourself. Do it in your own time.
And that's such an important thing to be clear to people, that you have to find the time where that's right for you. Haley, can you just tell us the name of the group that you run, and how would people get in touch with you if they're looking for support?
Of course. So we run the Jamestown Transgender Support Group. That is just a group for trans people to talk and meet. And if you are an ally, if you are cis, if you wanted to find support for somebody else, you can do that at the Jamestown Trans Facebook group. We'll provide a link.
Yes,
Okay.
we will.
Wonderful. From there, it's a page with updates with what we're doing openly as a part of Pride, what we're doing for our community, and also how to get a hold of us to get the support you need for you or your family member.
Great, thank you, Haley. So if there's just one thing, and this is always the hard question, if there's one thing you'd like people to take away from this, is there, what might your message be?
Do everything in your own time, but know that when you do decide to come out, there's somebody there for you. We are here for you. We are here for you in the community, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be rough, but you will have family. You will find people who want to take care of you, and later down the road, you want to take care of them too.
Great. Haley Arson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. So now that we're all set up on the other side of our stage here, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you all Charles Maldonado. And Charles became a Chautauqua County resident in 2008 at that time, and since then has been a very active member in our community, between time spent here and other places all around the world, which I think we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So welcome, Charles.
Thank you. Just
Carlos, sorry, I don't know. I apologize.
It's
Yeah.
good. It's good. Thank you so much, Steve.
It's
the community having me here. You know, and obviously special thanks for my mom for driving me over here.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Mom.
This area is very special to me due to my family. My family is, we are from Puerto Rico. My grandparents, arrived to this region, long ago, and they're buried in this land. I was the only one of my mom's side that was raised in Puerto Rico, so I always came to this region. in 2008, that basically changed. I lived in China, and we also like advocated for human rights, and through my business, which is a club developer, and we promoted the LGBTQ plus community in Shanghai, and actually opened up the first club there. So, which is to give to light, the various, people all over the world, and it doesn't matter, where you come from or what is your political background. That we all going through this together, really. So when I came over here, I was looking for a place, spiritual place, and the best spot was to be in Chautauqua, where I immediately gather my family to do something different. Being gay, which is something that I had a big trouble, not because my family did not accept me. On the contrary, they always been very supportive. Even in my family, we have transgender, lesbian, gays, fluids, all of them. Colors, different colors, so we are very, very in touch with our, culture and transparency of who we are. So, but I had a problem of being gay because I was not feeling that I always didn't know really if I was gay or not. I had girlfriends, and I always fancy, girls and guys, so that was a big thing because coming out is like not as easy as for some people is. You feel this since since you were a kid. For others, you grow into it, where you discover or yourself. We always in this learning process of life of learning who we are. And so in that process of life, I discovered, that I was not real, that I was gay, I was bisexual or fluid. And that came with the younger generation, actually, which I work with. And with this whole thing, in Chautauqua, I started a gardening project, the gleaning project with some of my friends here in Jamestown. We worked together hand in hand with mayors at the time and farmers, and I never saw any problems of being who you are. I think coming out is a you personal situation, and I think most people are so scared of being themselves, no matter the gender. I think it's a personal situation where you have to be comfortable, and no matter what, you have to always be yourself. So that is a process.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the difficulty you had in figuring out where you fell on that label spectrum, whether it's gay or bisexual. Did you find that within our community, the queer community, that was a difficult task?
Yes, it is, because most people at the time were like, if you're not straight or you're not gay, so where you fit in. And so when you are in let's take it back. One of my partners, we support the center, New York Center and New York City. We raise funds for them, and as well we give them condoms to promote them and what they do. So through life experience, not fitting into these gay clubs, because I was not comfortable to go to a gay club, I was very comfortable to go to a club where everybody is having fun or discussing whatever. So I did not know that if I've been, was sort of pushed aside for the gay community because I was not clear for them that I was not gay enough, and so that created perhaps some sort of depression, not being able to, and you know this very well in terms of mental health affects everything else that you do, and actually you may drink more, you would smoke more because you just don't know where you should go. So adding more lettuce letters to this whole LGBTQ plus, it just make more sense to me.
Right.
And I actually learn a lot more with, again, the younger generation.
Yeah.
You know, who are a lot more open.
And I guess I was going to ask you that. This is the second time you've highlighted the younger generation, where I know when I came out, and that discrimination that you talk about amongst those who supported me, it was you're either gay or you're straight. And if you're bisexual, you're just confused. And that's just an awful, statement. And you used the term fluid, which people might not understand if somebody is just tuning in. Could you maybe just explain what fluid means to you, and then how you see the younger generation doing this better than anyone before us?
I have a problem with this thing about asking you for whether you're black, white, or, without not knowing who you are, and so on. It's sort of the same. It's like, I think that my life is based in love, and the person that you will fall in love with. And I think that we, at least and myself, focus the most on the gender instead of the heart and the love. I have been with my ex is transgender. I have been with girls, and I have been with guys. So for me, it was love, the experience of love, the experience of being in Paris and being in love with someone. That in that time of my life, I could understand that it was not for me. It was not about that gender purpose. It was about the fluid of being a human. And how can you interact with that? So for me, that is what it is. It's just being able to love.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I like someone more than others? I don't know. I just see a gorgeous woman. I'm like, she's so beautiful. I see a gorgeous man. Oh my God, he's gorgeous. I express myself how I express. And I support many organizations. I support, DIFA, or AIDS for AIDS, or the LGBT Center, and I'm there. So it doesn't stop me to be who I am.
Right. Right. You talked about, to me earlier when we were just, prior to this, you talked about having somebody in your family who's transgendered.
Yes.
And how is it to support somebody in your family who identifies as transgendered?
It's very confusing for, again, the older generation, because they don't know if they could call it he or she, or, what you should call her, right? So it was very, she is fun, so we all learn it through her eyes, her life. And it's easier in our family because I sort of was the first person who came out.
Right.
So through me, a lot of my cousins, they're lesbians, gay, bisexual. So we have this very open relationship, this very comfortable place to be. Even though we're a Latino family, we say our stories very clear and in the open. I never, with my mom and my dad, she always advocated for me. At school, basically I was more fragile when I was growing up. So kids used to make fun of me being gay. And I didn't know. I just knew that I was so well protected that when I went to a public school, I was being bullied because I was more, gay. And that changed through my mom. She was a tough woman living in New York, from New York, living in Puerto Rico. And I became myself, learn how to fight, learn how to talk, learn how to advocate for others, So through my work, where I travel a lot, I advocated for children, for women, for the LGBTQ plus community. So it's a thing that you could be whatever, but know that you should always respect life. That's the principle of everything. Coming out is a huge thing for us because we are not only, gays or straight or lesbian or gender. We are people who are Black, Latinos, white, You know, it's a whole universe that we have in our hands. You know, so it's very important that we do what we do.
Carlos, I can't thank you enough for sharing all that love
Thank you.
with me and everyone who's here today. And I guess I have a question that I ask everyone at the end. What do you want everyone to take from your story and your experiences? If it had to be one thing, what would it be?
I think we're very focused in our, you know, change happens locally, you know, and I'm very, very happy and proud to be here this day, you know, where I saw historically a gay flag being lifted. You know, that I had the opportunity to be a mayor, the first, you know, openly gay mayor, you know, in New York State. It's huge. It's a beautiful thing. So this is a great force, and what I should tell people is that, yeah, do it on your time, but don't waste your time on thinking too much. As at the end of the day, it's your life to do with your life what you choose to do and live. So, you know, read the history of the people who have gone through a lot of pain and sorrow, you know, and know that you're not alone, you know, through this whole process of coming out. You know, we, like, you know, I heard before, you come out every day, 24/7, basically. So, you know, just don't think too much. You know, that's my, you know, go out there and travel the world.
Carlos Maldonado, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. All right. And moving along today, now it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Emily Von Way from Prevention Works, Hope Chautauqua. Emily.
Thank you for that introduction, Steve. National Coming Out Day. This is truly an incredible moment we are sharing today. Never would I have thought that I would be speaking at an event like this when I was growing up. You see, when I was younger and my teacher asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I always said, "I want to be a truck driver." Today, I am the LGBTQ liaison at Prevention Works. I help people cope with their coming out processes and everything that comes along with it. I educate teachers and their staff on the LGBTQ community and how to better support their students. So not quite the job I thought I would have when I was just a little girl, but hey, they are always looking for CDL licensed drivers, so I might do it one day. Today is such an important day because we are taking control of our history. We are coming together as a community to celebrate our vulnerability and empower one another to live authentically. 2 years ago today, I stepped out of the person I was forcing myself to be, and I stepped into the person that I am today. And that is an unapologetically queer woman who will continue to advocate for her community. Although the years leading up to this point were quite rocky, the past is what fuels me to fight for the future. My role as the LGBTQ liaison at Prevention is providing the support that I needed growing up, as well as many of my other peers. At Prevention Works, we are here to support you through your most vulnerable moments. I am here to help you navigate your coming out process, to help you find the best way to cope during all the moments that come along with this difficult time. I'm here to connect you with LGBTQ resources and provide social emotional education as well as prevention education. Prevention Works has many different programs upholding our mission of building a safe and healthy environment by effectively educating the community on positive life choices. Our services pair perfectly with the Hope Coalition, an initiative of Prevention Works. The Hope Coalition works directly with the youth to help create an environment where all youth can develop into healthy and productive adults through the promotion and implementation of healthy lifestyle choices and the use of evidence-based, community-level substance use intervention. Here at Prevention Works, we are here to support you and help build a healthy community. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
So now you get to come to the chair, too.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I just told you a little bit about what Prevention Works does, and really what drives me to be the best LGBTQ liaison as possible is my coming out story. So when I was in high school, my dad actually came out for the first time in his entire life. And it was a struggle for him. It was very difficult. It was not received very well. He was married to my mother at the time, so there was a lot of hardships that came along with that from our family, from the community, and also my mom was a teacher, so it was very public. It was a very public event that happened, and I grew up in Dunkirk, so a very small community. And his coming out process really affected my own coming out process because I was scared. I saw what he went through, and I didn't really understand all of my feelings either, so it was really hard. And growing up through this process and whatnot, I watched my dad struggle with suicide. He was on and off suicidal, and I just remember one day I was sitting on the bathroom floor for whatever reason. I guess that's just where I like to have my conversations with my parents, and I could just hear the tone in my dad's voice, and he wasn't okay, and I knew he wasn't okay, and he was telling me that he just felt so alone in this world, and no one felt the way he felt, and no one would ever know how he felt either. And in that moment, I just said, "Dad, I know how you feel. I love women." And in my mind, I was like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? I didn't even really know these feelings I had, and now I just came out to myself, I came out to my father, and that was the first time that I really said the words out loud to anyone, period. And it took me a little while after that. We had many conversations, many hearts to hearts, and I think it really helped him. It really helped him with his struggles, and it helped him connect with not only his daughter, but also the LGBTQ community. So it wasn't until another year or so later that I finally built up the courage and the self-confidence to come out to the rest of my family, the rest of the world, and I really got comfortable with who I was, and it drives the fight for me to advocate for our community and build better support systems for our youth so that they can be confident as well.
So it's just an amazingly beautiful story, and how each of you, your father and yourself, supported each other. And I think for many of us who come out and have coming out stories, it at least for me, maybe I shouldn't say for many of us, but for me, I always thought, wow, what if my parents really understood this?
Right.
Would it be easier? So do you think your coming out became easier because you had your father there supporting you?
Definitely, when I was coming out to my dad, it was definitely easier because I knew that he knew how it felt. I knew, it was just, I felt a little safe.
Right.
And that he would understand and that he would respond appropriately because people didn't really respond very well when he came out. So I knew that he would come out, or when I came out to him, that it would be received well. For some of my other family members, I was a little timid because when my dad came out, they didn't take it very well. So that was a little more difficult to come out to them.
Right.
But I think it also did help me that he came out first because they were almost like, well, this isn't the first time,
So, if you don't mind me asking this, how old were you when you came out?
When I came out to my dad on the phone that day, I was 19, almost 20. It was
Okay.
like right before my 20th birthday. And
Okay.
then it wasn't until I was into 21 that I came out to everyone else.
Okay, so still young.
Right.
And as what's it like to come out young in more recent times? What was that experience like?
You know, so I was in college when I came out.
Okay,
So I felt like being in the college setting for me, it was, I would say it would be more comfortable because I was around a lot of people that were open-minded. My university had a very large LGBTQ center, so I was able to go to the center and be around other people who identified within the LGBTQ community. And I think it's kind of funny that you say that because when I was coming out, I felt like I was so old. Like, I should have came out years ago, you know? And I feel like today, it almost seems, especially with social media and whatnot, that kids are coming out at younger and younger ages. So that's kind of my thoughts.
right. So, when you're sitting here talking to me, there's a lot of joy and there's a lot of happiness. How do you share that joy and happiness out in the community when you're supporting other people as they go through the process?
Right. I definitely think it helps to validate people,
Okay.
to just be their support system because you might be the only person that is validating them. And when you are validated, I think it is a source of joy that someone understands you or is at least trying to understand you the way you want to be understood.
That's great. That's great. So, as your story unfolded, I was listening to it, and it is, in hindsight, is there gratitude for your story now in the way it unfolded? I know for me, it took me a long time to get to the point where I was grateful for my story, and I just wonder, for you, have you found gratitude in the path that you've come?
Right. Yes, I definitely think I am grateful for that experience. I think that I came out at the right time. I really built that support system around me to be open-minded, supportive, loving people. I built that chosen family that I wanted to really surround myself with. And I'm very fortunate and grateful that I had that opportunity to pick and choose the loved ones that I really wanted to be there to share that moment with me.
Right. You touch on a point that I've heard a lot today about come out, but come out when you're ready.
Right.
And I think that's so important for everyone to hear and understand as they listen to what we're talking about today. So it's time for that question that I'm asking everyone. If there's one thing that you would want people to take away from your coming out story, what would that be?
I would definitely say accept yourself, accept your friends, your family, and the people who are around you, and be assertive. We have to pave the way for ourselves in order to achieve the things that we want to achieve. Because no matter what your identity is, how you self-identify, you are valid and you deserve a good and healthy environment for yourself.
And I think before I let you go, there's one thing I want to be clear on, because this makes me so happy. So if you're in the community and you know somebody who is a teen or someone who's very young and they're beginning to explore issues of their sexuality, thinking of coming out, and they need support, are you telling me that somebody can reach out to Prevention Works and actually get somebody, yourself, who will be there to help them with supports for whatever they need? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, so you can self-refer, you can refer a friend, anyone can refer someone to Prevention Works, where I will be able to assist them in whatever needs that they might need. And also, I can refer you to other agencies, providers, partnerships, if there is other needs
Okay.
as well.
And that doesn't need to be somebody who's experiencing issues of substance use or something like that?
Correct. So we are
Okay.
prevention education, but we work with social
Right.
emotional learning and learning
Right.
how to cope as well.
Right. And I knew that, but I just I wanted everyone else to understand that, because it's so important, and this is so amazing to think that somebody's in our community to help people, our young folks who are coming out. So thank you.
Yes, thank
Thanks
you,
for
Steve.
joining us. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
So our next guest, I'm very excited to introduce. She's a friend of mine, Tasha McFall Marsh. And Tasha pointed out to me that I could say that she uses the pronouns she and her. And Tasha, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
So before we get into your story, this identifying people by their pronouns is something that is a little bit new. Why do we do that?
I think it's important to do that because it helps people feel comfortable in their own skin.
Okay.
It's a way of identifying people with how they choose to be identified, not maybe what's assigned at birth, but
Right.
what they feel they are. And that's very important, especially in today's society, because we're moving forward. We're moving more towards that, more towards the fluid understanding and
Right.
just people being who they are.
Right. And Carlos spoke a little bit about the being on the spectrum of being fluid, and how if we identify our pronouns, then somebody else who's talking to us knows and understands how we view ourselves. So, well, thank you. And so, Tasha, I know you have your story prepared. Would you like to share that with us now?
If you're ready.
I'm ready.
I am Tosh McCommarsh. I was born and raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a Christian-based religion that began in the early 1900s. I was baptized at the age of 13 because that was the same year that I realized I was a lesbian, and I was so young and afraid of losing my family. So really for the next few years, I lived for them. I didn't really live with the hope of finding love or a family of my own. And I did all that I could to gain their love. But by the time I was 22, I knew I had to leave. Homosexuality is strictly forbidden in that religion and leads to no hope of salvation. This meant that I grew with the idea that I would never be able to find love or that I deserved to, and also bred in me so much self-loathing that I had planned to end my life and made it even to the 3rd Street Bridge. But while I was standing there, I had a moment of clarity in the form of a spider's web that was dancing in the moonlight, which I found beautiful. And then it made me realize that there was still beauty in the world, and I knew I had to come out. And in a way I did that night because I had made the decision that I was going to end the lie and choose to be true to myself. However, when I did come out to my family, it was the end of our relationship. Everyone I had known before the age of 23, with the exception of 3 people, cut off contact with me. I had been raised in a tight-knit religious community. I worked with witnesses. I rented my first apartment from witnesses, and all my friends were witnesses. And when I came out, I lost them all. My mother stopped using my name, calling me tenant, as I was staying in a house that she owned. A week later, she had all the utilities shut off. And when I asked why, she said, "This is what happens when you become part of Satan's world." I had nowhere else to go, and I could not afford to move, so I continued to live there. The utilities remained off for the entire next 11 months, and this was in the winter of 2014. which is the coldest winter we had in a century. One day when I was at work, she had changed the locks. And when I returned home, she and my brother were there, but they had torn through the house and gone through all my belongings. I don't know why she had done this, but this was also the last visible contact I ever had with her. This was 8 years ago. But you know what the funny thing is that I wouldn't change any of it. Because without the loss and pain, I don't know if I would have such a deep appreciation and a profound feeling for my now chosen family and the love that I have found in those who have accepted me as I am. And I have learned what is important in life. Later that same year, after I had seen her that last time, I went to my first Pride event, and it gave me courage to have some allies with me there. And I don't think they really understand how much they mean to me even now. But I remember while I was sitting there that there was a gay couple that were there with their baby. And I remember I could see so much love in those moments that I watched them, and they'll never know how much they touched my heart. But I couldn't help but tear up. That was the life that I always wanted. That was the sense of home. I didn't believe it was possible until I was watching those two fathers with their child. And for the first time in my life, I started to feel hope. I lost so much coming out, but also for me, I gained so much. This year, I married the love of my life and welcomed our first child into the world. I know we weren't able to have Pride this year, but I hope that we can someday soon, and someone might see my little family and believe that this kind of love is possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Sorry, it's a lot.
it is a lot. It's a lot of sadness, and it's also a lot of beauty, too. And I'm struck by so many stories I hear are sadness and beauty and love, and the transformation from one to the other almost seems impossible. But it's not. And what allowed you to, or helped you to push through the sadness and the abandonment to get to a point of, Tasha, honestly, beautiful love, because I've seen your family, and it's beautiful. How did you go from A to B?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, in some senses, we can't really appreciate the light fully if we don't have the dark. And I think there was always a hope, but I kind of threw myself into caring for others. And I always kind of hoped that maybe someday the experiences that I had could prevent others from having those kind of experiences, or could feel less alone knowing that somebody else had gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
I learned with losing my family that, for example, my son is never going to feel that, no matter what or how he identifies later in life.
Mm.
He's always going to know what it's like to be loved by his parents. And if I was able to succeed as much as I have in life, I can't imagine how much that means for him in his life in the years to come.
Yeah, I agree. You touched on being at the point of considering suicide, and I know I work for the Mental Health Association, so I know that within the queer community, suicide is a huge epidemic. I think that once you walk away from suicide, there are probably tools that you walk away with that maybe help keep you from going to that place again. What were those tools for you?
I think just in that moment, even though it's hard, and like reminding myself that there is more. That there can be moments that feel hopeless, but if you just make it through those moments, there's always something more.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, seeing that spider web, it was kind more of an aha moment. That it was just, I can still feel.
Mm-hmm.
That there's still more for me to feel than just sadness and rejection. And I think it made me appreciate even my heart that I could feel something so passionately for something so small.
The spider web.
The spider web. And I'm not a big fan of bugs, so that's good.
But you became a big spider fan,
I became
didn't
a
you?
big spider fan.
So, so can you tell people, if you're comfortable with this, a little bit about what your family is like now?
Well, it's large and in charge.
So if you didn't hear her, she said it's large and in charge, so.
Yeah, over the years, I've kind of tried to surround myself with like individuals, but in a lot of ways, people have just kind of fallen into my lap over the years. Now I feel I have mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters of people that are either ally or part of the queer community. And it's just mind-boggling to me, all the support and love that I've gotten, because it's just not something I expected ever to happen. Today I spent some time with a mother figure that this could be the end. But I still appreciate those moments because I never anticipated finding a mother figure again. I never thought I'd find that love again. And it's just, it's coworkers, it's friends, it's people I've met somewhere, somehow along the way. And now even having my son as part of my family, like, it gives you a whole new appreciation that things can continue.
Right. I think one of the things, Tasha, that I so love about your story is that for your story, when something was taken away, something came in and filled that vacuum, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So now that you have a family who supports you and where love defines that unconditional love, do you still think of the old family, and do you think of, will that be a possibility again?
I pretty much dream of my old family every single night, even though it's been years since there's been contact. I do, in some sense, I long for it, but also I wonder if it can be a possibility again.
Yeah.
I did this year, actually, one sibling has now had some contact via Facebook, which I haven't had in any years. No explanation of it, but there is some.
Right.
But I think having a chosen family is the key for me to keep going. Because blood can be so strong, but the idea that you can have somebody who loves you for who you are without that is key for me.
And does gratitude play a part in this?
Yes, there aren't even words in the English language to describe what I feel when I have people that are surrounding me and supportive. Like having so much hate and so much loss of identity just by someone not seeing you for who you are just because of one aspect of you, to having people that accept you unapologetically open arms. I'm grateful to everyone that's decided to love me
Right, right.
and put up with me.
So, so thinking about the takeaway, what should people, or that's not the right way to say this. What do you hope people take from your story?
I hope that they take away that even if you lose some, you're going to gain so much more.
Yeah,
But the most important thing is to be you,
yeah,
whether that means coming out or not. Be authentically yourself,
right.
and the people who support you will follow.
So, I guess this isn't the last question, because you said whether you come out or not, be your true self. So what does that mean?
I think your identity should be for you. It doesn't always have to be explained to other people. I think that should be something that you do by choice. It doesn't always mean that you have to do it publicly or anything. I think as long as you're comfortable in your own skin and the way you present yourself to the world, that's the most important part.
Thank you for saying that, because I think so often when we come out, if it's big and bold, we think everyone else should come out in big and bold ways, and that's not always the case. It's an individual's choice as to how they do that. Tasha, thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Cecil-Hanley. I'm the Pride Outreach Coordinator for this event, and I'm here to give recognition to one of our sponsors, the Robert H. Jackson Center. We want to thank them because they've donated this space today for us to use, as well as all the technological equipment in terms of streaming this event, filming the event, and providing equipment and the sets and everything. And without them, we could not have done this event the way that we are today. So we are so thankful, and I offered on their behalf to read some information about them. So the Robert H. Jackson Center envisions a world where the universal principles of equality, fairness, and justice prevail. The mission of the center is to advance public awareness and appreciation of the principles of justice and the rule of law as embodied in the achievements and legacy of Robert H. Jackson, U.S. Supreme Court Justice and Chief U.S. Prosecutor at Nuremberg. The Robert H. Jackson Center invites and initiates scholarly work on Jackson's legal, social, and political contributions. Programs focus on exploring and challenging the universal principles of equality, fairness, and justice through interactive exhibits and facilitated discussions. As such, the center invites national and international officials and dignitaries to analyze contemporary issues of peace and justice and the relevance to Justice Jackson's body of work, provides local educational opportunities for school children and college students, and hosts continuing education for attorneys, judges, and public officials. So we invite you to keep an eye on their website, which is roberthjackson.org, as well as their social media pages for their virtual program opportunities coming up, including free webinars such as one on the Electoral College and a free continuing legal education seminar on implicit bias. So if you would like to come to the Robert H. Jackson Center, they do have free tours you can schedule. You would want to call them at 716-483-6646. And if you'd like to donate to their annual fund, you can go to roberthjackson.org/donate. I also am here as a representative of Jamestown Pride, this is one of our events. We started meeting last year, December 2019, to talk about what we want to do for Pride in June 2020. As with many organizations and events, we did not see that come to fruition. We were very fortunate that one of our sponsors, the Jamestown Public Market, still had us able to come and have a booth there to present information. It's actually was one of the first times we started talking about the Fenton History exhibit, and we were able to do that. There was a Pride Mass that St. Luke's Episcopal Church provided online. So it wasn't quite the event we wanted to have, but we were excited to have it. We are still looking at doing something for June 2021. What that will look like will all depend on what's happening, nationally. So, but we are always looking for people to join us, to volunteer with Jamestown Pride. We anticipate restarting our meetings again in early 2021, and so we'll need volunteers to help with planning the event. And also, we currently have decals, which have, if you've seen it, if it's not on camera over here, you'll see it back on when we rejoin Stephen on camera again, the big J Pride. We're distributing to businesses and organizations who would like to have them displayed on their entrance doors, so to basically show that they are supportive of our community here in Jamestown in Chautauqua County. So if you are interested in being kept in the loop on what's happening with Jamestown Pride, you can email jamestownpride@mhachautauqua.org, and we'll add you to our email list. Otherwise, I think that's all I have. We'll continue on with our interviews. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Julia. And now we're going to return to the interview part of our coming out celebration. And joining us today, we have Chris Laurie to my far right and Michael Baronich to my immediate right. So welcome,
Thank you,
guys.
Stephen.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you, it's nice to be here.
So I'm going to let you guys start off. What if it's coming out day? It's National Coming Out Day.
That's right.
And we've talked about how there are different times where you come out. It's not just one event, but maybe we remember one event. Would you be willing to share a little bit of your story about coming out and what that is? Maybe it's you as a couple or it's individually.
Yeah, absolutely, go for it. So, I guess for me, it was more, I don't think it was a forced event, but it was definitely sort of a steamrolling event that kind of, I guess, forced my hand. I came out 24 years ago, and, I'm not of the generation now where I think they're so much more fortunate, where they have so many more outlets for support. I remember being in high school and not directly being bullied, but constantly living in that fear where anytime somebody made a gay joke or used the word faggot, just my ears always burning, like, do they know, do they know? And that constant sort of creeping feeling of fear.
Yeah.
And growing up in a small town, that kind of drives your emotional state almost on a daily basis. It's that ever-present thing, like when is the right time? What do I do? Who do I tell? Who do I talk to? But still being very confused at the same time because I didn't understand my own feelings of sexuality or the emotions that were associated with it. And then I went to college and, was part of a fraternity, and that, presented another different dynamic. And at the same time, I had started exploring the gay lifestyle and communities in different cities. And what I realized is that my life became very compartmentalized. And I had groups of friends here and groups of friends here and groups of family here. And each of them knew part of who I was. Yeah. And it became a time, I was 22. I told my sister the year before I was 21, and then at 22, I finally, had a relationship for the first time with another man, and thought, okay, well, this is the catalyst I need to tell my family. And at the same time, these separate groups of friends started overlapping so much that I couldn't remember the lies I was telling to which group of people to protect an identity that wasn't truly myself. And so I got to the point where I said, enough is enough. I need to be honest with who I am for myself and be honest with who I am to the rest of the people in my life. And I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified. Not warranted one bit, you know. I was very, very fortunate in the amount of support I got from my family and every one of my friends. And, you know, I hear people talk about this tremendous weight being lifted off your shoulders when you finally do come out. And although that's very true, with that comes the same amount of fear, the same amount of anxiety, the same amount of excitement, and the same amount of hope. And you're kind of just flooded with emotion all over again, you know, like, what does this mean for my future? And as relieving as it was still very uncertain. Like, am I gonna ever be able to have, you know, that husband and the family that, you know, I've always envisioned having? And, you know, fortunately I was, so.
Yeah, my story is, there's a lot of similarities. It was a little different. I did come out when I was quite young. I was 14 years old. I was born and raised in Springville, New York, which is in Erie County.
Sure.
And I was forced out of the closet. I had heard threats that an adult within the community was going to tell my parents. And so that was pretty scary, that my parents were gonna hear of me before I could tell them, or I could feel comfortable telling them. So, you know, to go around this adult in the community, I decided to be, you know, forthright with my parents. And it was, you know, it was very emotional, I think, for myself, and you know, it was new for my parents. You know, they were accepting. I think they knew that they didn't quite understand, and they were honest about that. So it took a few years, you know, lots of questions, for them to fully comprehend, you know, what that would, I don't know, what that would look like for their future family and things like that. So you know, it was hard. It was a blessing in disguise. I think I took, you know, I was a target. You know, I took a lot of discrimination. You know, I received a lot of, you know, you know, intolerance and different people's comments. But I'm okay with that, because looking back on that, I didn't realize that there were even younger people who identified as LGBTQ+, who were younger than I was, who, you know, just by me coming out in the 9th grade, it made their 9th grade, I guess, a little bit more comfortable. So, and I didn't realize that till I was in my 20s, that other people had been following my story and my journey too. But I, you know, consider myself very fortunate and very blessed. Christopher and I met just about 4 years ago, and I think my coming out story had a whole new chapter when we met. I just feel I feel even more comfortable now having somebody to share this journey with in life. And 6 months ago, we welcomed our first son. One of our friends offered to carry for us, so we had a gestational carrier. And you know, talk about chosen family. Our families have grown, and you know, just by tenfold. Your family, my family, and our carrier's family. We've got lots of moms, lots of dads, lots of aunts, lots of aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
And our family
incredible.
Continues to grow.
Yeah, and Pride is really, really special to us too. You know, we had originally planned a very big local wedding, and we thought, you know, we had this vision of what it was gonna be like. And when we started the process of having a child, we decided that, you know, that was gonna take priority, and we kind of shifted gears, and we ended up getting married in Central Park during World Pride. And, you know, what an incredible experience, you know, to be able to get married in a city with 6 million people celebrating the diversity that makes up such an amazing group of people, you know? So really, really big for us.
So, Michael, I'm kind of fascinated with the part of your story at coming out at 14. Because because of my experience, my thought now is I would be lucky to still be alive if that happened. So to me, I look at you and I hear your story and I hear amazing courage. And it is. And there might be somebody watching right now who is 14, and what would you say to them if they're in that same not predicament, but situation right now where they have to decide, do I come out? What's gonna happen? What would you say?
I did not want to. I was not comfortable enough with myself. I didn't even know what being gay fully meant.
Yeah.
I didn't understand. I didn't comprehend really, the concept of sex. I don't think at that age either. So it was a lot to wrap my head around. I had a friend who's still a dear friend who really encouraged me, who really, asked questions and continued to talk with me and, made me get to that point where I was comfortable enough to go home and have that conversation with my parents. I felt like I was kind of on a time crunch. I was on a little bit of a timeline to get to my parents before this woman ran into my parents at the grocery store or church. But my advice would be to find that community of friends that I didn't realize it at the time, but was, my friend who helped me out was part of my family who, we still are very close with today. And, just know that, and I know a lot of people have said this, you could, you're in the middle of what you think is your darkest time, in your life, but there are so many people and so many resources out there. And thank goodness for the internet now, because you can search for that support system.
Yeah.
And my support system wasn't large. I had two close friends who helped me through it.
I would also add, like a lot of things in my life, I realize that this is not something we ever have to do alone.
Yeah.
There are so many avenues
Yeah.
of support out there. And one of the greatest things that I learned through coming out was that people will surprise you.
Yeah.
We create a picture in our head of what we assume people are going to react or respond with.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's not the case.
Right.
And it's a lot of really pleasant, loving surprises.
Right.
And a lot of growth in interpersonal relationships because of that, So it's
Right.
empowering.
It is. I like that you said that, Chris. That was my experience too. There were people, I was just,
I will never,
whoa,
I'm never
whoa.
telling them, right?
Yeah.
And then they're
And
the ones that are
and they were
like,
the ones that embraced me.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
let's get through this,
Yeah.
let's help you, so.
So, Michael, I believe you're a teacher.
I am.
So is it okay if I talk a little bit about this? I won't be
Yes.
specific.
Yes.
But as a teacher, because so many of us, at least from my generation, I'm from a generation before you, think back of these awful experiences we had in high school. You think that's changing?
I do. I do, slowly.
Okay.
Slowly, across our region.
Yeah.
Slowly across Chautauqua County, slowly across New York, and the Northeast and the United States. But change is good.
Yeah.
Progress is good. Christopher and I are from two generations. We discuss that a lot, the differences, the difference in experiences that we've had throughout our lives. One of my teachers was helpful in helping me find myself and find that comfortability level. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went into education as well. I really wanted to make sure that school is supposed to be a safe place. It's supposed to be a place where students of all creed and colors and ages come to learn. And if you can't be comfortable, then learning is not going to happen.
Right.
And I just wanted to make sure that whatever school that I was going to have my career at, I wanted to make sure that students felt comfortable to be, to feel comfortable for who they are.
Right.
And so that's been another process of my coming out journey, if you will, is my family, and just being visible with my family. It's as simple as having a picture of my family on my desk at work.
Right.
I don't have to necessarily announce my family,
Sure.
but I know that there are students who are
Yeah.
sitting in class. All they have to do is just look over to my desk
Yeah.
to realize that they're not alone.
Right. I think this morning at the flag racing, we were talking about the importance of symbols and how we look for symbols when we're thinking of coming out that tell us it's safe. And it's funny, you talking about a teacher. I had a teacher in high school. While I was not ready to come out in high school, that teacher had symbols that I knew I was safe and there was support. So while it was very indirect support, it was special. So thank you.
Thank
for
you, yeah.
what you're doing. So guys, what's it like in Chautauqua County to have a family and to have a baby? What is that like for two gay men in Chautauqua County?
Honestly, I haven't experienced anything other than love and kind of, I guess, enthusiasm. I think people are excited for us. And again,
I think people like babies.
yeah,
They just like,
people like chubby babies, so they see the baby and I don't think they see much. No, I'm just, I think that, people are enthusiastic about it. We have not received
Well-
any negative, I have not anyway. I think people are happy for us. I think it's different. People have a lot of questions, and I think that's great when people ask questions.
Yeah.
We can answer them
Yes.
honestly, and that creates conversation and education, which in turn, helps our cause in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things.
Yeah.
The more direct answer we can get without allowing presumption,
Yep.
the further along we are.
Right.
It's kind of, for me, it's just full disclosure, like, this is what we did,
Yeah.
this is how we created our
Yeah.
family. It's an incredible miracle of science, and, this baby is loved beyond, like I said, our families are enormous now, and this kid will never, ever want for love, and that's the
Yeah.
incredible thing, and I think our neighbors see that, and I think the community sees that,
Yeah.
and I think it's becoming more and more common, and I think that that's incredible.
yeah, I hope so. I like Christopher said, lots of questions.
Yeah.
People were so, just so gracious and so kind, have been so kind throughout the whole process. And again, it's just being visible. We are not the first, we're not the first gay family.
Nope.
We're not the first gay family to be interviewed today. And we're certainly not the last. We want to make sure that our sons are, and daughters, and everybody in between are growing up feeling comfortable, knowing that they can have a family of their own.
Right.
And one day, no matter who it is they want to love or marry. And I tell people too, there are so many other issues in Chautauqua County, including the polluted lake, that we need to spend our energy on. Don't worry about us. We're good. We're good.
I love that. I love that. I have watched you guys be very open about your family and be very visible, and I applaud you for that, because there's courage in that too. There is, and one of the themes I've heard a lot today is ask questions. That it's okay to ask questions, because somebody who's not queer might not understand that. And we break stigma when we answer those questions. So, wow, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Michael, what do you want people to walk away with after hearing you today?
I think it's so important to constantly be educated, to educate yourself, be patient and willing to educate others. And someone said it earlier too, know our history, know our group's history, know our people's history, constantly just remind, I think we have to remind ourselves that we are here today because so many people were brave, or because they were forced to, or because they were, they did something very uncomfortable so that we can have this conversation today.
Yeah. Chris?
I guess for me, it would be to just constantly remind yourself that when you are ready, that you are not alone. That there's somebody out there that's willing to listen. There's somebody out there that's willing to help you find somebody
Right.
that can support you. If it's not, your family, then you'll find that support in auxiliary areas. And don't have that presumption, don't create in your mind a reaction before the time happens, We tend to, create this
Yeah.
catastrophe before it happens because we're so vested emotionally.
Yeah.
And it's such an immense thing for us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always play out like that. So, reach out, ask for help, look for friends, and, when the time is right, you'll find that courage.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you guys for
Thank you,
being here, and thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, have
Absolutely.
fun.
Thank
you.
Yeah, thanks. Vote. So, wow, what a great afternoon this has been. I now get to share a little bit about what the MHA does and why the MHA is a sponsor of this event. But what's amazing is for me, I don't think I can tell why the MHA is part of this event unless I tell just a little bit of my story. And I think for you to understand my story of coming out, you have to understand where I came from. And I came from an amazing family. And there was one side of my family that was Irish Catholic, and there was one side of my family that was Scandinavian and German, or Lutheran. And in my family, boy, did the Irish Catholic side of my family win out. And I grew up in that tradition of growing up in an Irish Catholic family where church and the Kennedys were, the things you were most proud of. And I remember at a young age having being taught in church and hearing from my family that for many people, they felt that the surest way to get a ticket to hell was to be a gay man. And that was, I heard a lot of that. I didn't hear it always directly from my mother and father, but boy, did I hear it all around me. And the time I grew up, there weren't all these wonderful, positive role models for the queer community. And so listening to Michael talk about coming out in high school is just amazing to me. And thinking that people in this day and age can do that. But I think of somewhere along the way in high school, I got the idea that coming out was actually doing something. And to me, that seemed like it was going to a gay bar. That if I went to a gay bar, that would be coming out for me. And I remember when I reached the point, I was 18 and I could drive at night. And in New York State, when I was 18, you could drink when you were 18. So I did my research and found out that there was a bar here in Jamestown, actually not very far from where we are right now, called the Docks. I had heard that that's where that was a gay bar. So I thought that if I go there, that would make me gay. That would help me to come out. And I went there, and it was an amazing place. It was a place of love. There was loud music. There was dancing. There was a lot of revelry, and there was community there. And I got all that from the first night I went there. And I struck up a conversation with a gentleman there, and at the age of 18, I had no idea what being gay was. I didn't have any idea how you kissed another man. I didn't understand how you were intimate or had sex with another man. None of that I really knew about. And so knowing that and leaving with this gentleman, we walked out, and I went to get in my car, and I asked him if he needed a ride home, and he said yes, and I drove him home, and he invited me into his house, and we started kissing. And before I knew it, I guess I would say we were, what I would say now, was starting to have sex. And that very quickly turned into a forced situation where I was raped. And it was such an amazing transformation to go from this incredibly liberating spot that was just happening 2 hours ago to this point where I was being forced to do something that I had no idea what was happening, and I didn't want to happen. And I remember fleeing that apartment and just being absolutely terrified, and thinking at different points that everything I had heard in church was true, because this was the first time I was going to be out and look at what happened. And I remember the fear of getting home and trying to sneak into my house without my parents realizing what had happened. And I was driving my father's car, and when I got into the garage, there was blood on the seat where I had been driving. And the panic I had as a kid as to how do I remove this? How do I remove this? And I figured it out. And as I healed from that experience, I kept that to myself. And I was close to the point where I went to New York City, because when I was 18, I moved to New York to go to college, and moved to New York City in 1984. And if any of you remember what 1984 was, that was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. That was the beginning of all of that starting. And I moved to New York thinking I was moving to this place of liberation where I could be free and where I can be open. And what I moved into was a community who was being attacked by a virus that we didn't understand what it was. And at that point, science told us that it was a disease of gay men, IV drug users, and Haitians. And I don't know if any of you remember that, but initially that's who they said got this disease: gay men, IV drug users, and Haitians. Well, science has told us more now, but to move from that initial experience into a community where I expected support and liberation, and I got a lot of support, but there was a lot of fear. And there was fear of intimacy and fear of connection, because it was not uncommon to know someone for a short period of time, and then maybe within 30 or 60 days they were gone, and they had died from what we now know to be AIDS, but at the time we had no idea what that was, and people would just disappear. And it was amazing for me that the things that came up greatly affected my mental health. I entered a period of pretty severe depression and pretty severe anxiety. And honestly, the way I pulled myself out of that was through drugs. And what soon developed was a very unhealthy addiction to drugs. But the thing that was amazing for me about that connection that developed when I used drugs was I was able to be connected to my community, to that queer community, the gay community, because the drugs took away all those things that you know, the thoughts of sin or the thoughts of being a bad person or that this wasn't right. And as I fast forward through those really awful times, I found myself back in Jamestown. And I was in a place here of support from my family and a place of enormous love. And I was also in a treatment setting here in Jamestown. And one of the first people in Jamestown who I came out to here was my counselor in that treatment facility. And she was just an amazing woman, because to me, this community was a place where I couldn't find support and couldn't find trust and support. And I found it in this counselor. And she took me through an amazing journey. And we had gotten to a point in our course of treatment where she began to very actively talk to me about coming out and what I thought that would be and what I thought that would look like. And she wasn't the first person to talk about that. I was beginning to talk about that. And over the course of working with her, we had gotten to a point where we had really planned out me coming out to my parents and what that would be like. And we talked about what could happen in a bad sense and what could happen in a good sense. And she really prepared me for this, but I was, to be honest with you, I was scared to death. And at some point, we had an opportunity to return or we actually traveled to my uncle's house in Paterson, New Jersey. And my uncle's son was a member of the Franciscan Friars. And my uncle, being a good Catholic family, was a dentist and pro bono did the dentistry for all the Franciscan Friars from Washington, D.C. up to Boston. And it was my aunt and uncle's 50th wedding anniversary, and we had been invited to a celebration of his anniversary in the church in Paterson, New Jersey, which was a Franciscan church. And this church had to accommodate close to 400 people, and there were probably about 350 Franciscan friars in their brown robes there, and 50 family members. But these were all friars from up and down the east coast of the United States, and celebrating the love that was my aunt and uncle's family. And I was in there sitting next to my mom, and one of the things that really hit me in that was the fear that my family could never acknowledge the love that I had for another man in the way the love for my aunt and uncle was being acknowledged there in a very public way. And I actually got quite emotional, and I walked outside. I was crying, and my mom followed me outside, and a couple of us today have talked about the importance of moms in our story. And my mom could see I was upset, and she said, "Hey, let's go for a walk." So we kind of walked around the church there. And I must have tried 10 times to come out to my mom right there. And I stopped myself at every point. We got back to the church, and we were sitting on the steps talking, and I still had not said to my mom what I wanted to tell her. And she said, hey, I think we should go back into church. I think the service is almost ending. And she said, that way they're not going to notice us missing. And I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. But I thought, I need to say something before I go in there. And I came out to my mom right there. And the reaction from my mother was that she started laughing at me. And I got really indignant. I said, I've gone through all of this, all that I've gone through and all the internal torture, and you're laughing. And she says, I'm laughing because I can't believe this is what you were so afraid of. And I looked at her, and then she said to me, she says, Stephen, I've known since you were 15 that you were gay. And I said to my mom, I said, well, why didn't you tell me then? And she said to me, she says, Stephen, coming out isn't for me to do, that's for you to do, where you accept who you are and you come out. And I just kind of stepped back, and my mom felt like the most knowledgeable person and the most spiritual person walking the face of the earth at that point. And not only was my coming out story, but it was also the point where I realized that the coming out was really about me first accepting who I was, and then the next step was telling everybody else who I was. And without that internal acceptance, there could not be external acceptance. For me, there's been nothing but love from my family. And so I've had the benefit of an amazing biological family, but also what people have talked about today, that chosen family. I've had the benefit of choosing a family. And I know for me, getting back to mental health and thinking about where we are and why the Mental Health Association is here today as a sponsor, at a later point, I was given the opportunity to go into the mental health field, and I jumped at it. And it was not something I ever thought I was going to do, but to me, for me, honestly, what drives me in this, my work, is knowing the numbers of people in our community who are affected by drug addiction, who are affected by mental illness, and affected by suicide. So, as the director at the MHA, we are committed as an organization to support, to offer services in recovery to anyone within our queer community, and of course the greater community too. It has become part of our mission. So it gives us great pleasure. I'm speaking not just on my behalf, but also the board of directors of the Mental Health Association, to support our community, the queer community in Jamestown. And I think that actually brings us to a close today. So I want to thank everybody who showed up here today to share their stories, to be vulnerable. And I especially want to thank the Jackson Center for hosting us today and being such a wonderful host. And we ask you all to keep your eyes and ears open and look for Pride, which will be coming up in 2021. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the spring.